Gloria Swanson and Herbert Somborn. Gloria Swanson was the epitome of 1920s Hollywood glamour, dripping in jewels, swathed in silk, and commanding the silent screen with an unmatched allure. But behind the scenes, her personal life was just as dramatic as her films. In 1925, her second marriage to Herbert Somborn, a wealthy restaurateur, imploded in spectacular fashion. Somborn didn't just file for divorce, he publicly accused Swanson of multiple affairs, including one with legendary director Cecil B. DeMille. While the exact number of alleged lovers remains murky, the scandal was enough to send shockwaves through Hollywood. Swanson, at the peak of her career, couldn't afford a drawn-out courtroom battle. Instead, she settled for a jaw-dropping $70,000, a sum that would be worth over $1.2 million today. But the financial fallout didn't end there. Swanson, known for her lavish spending and European shopping sprees, suddenly found herself making drastic cutbacks. She had to part with much of her household staff and scramble to maintain her extravagant lifestyle. Meanwhile, Somborn took his settlement money and founded the Brown Derby, a Hollywood hotspot that would become a legendary meeting place for the industry's elite. For Swanson, the divorce marked the beginning of a long and complicated financial struggle. Though she remained a major star, her spending habits, combined with risky business ventures and tax troubles, kept her in a near-constant state of financial distress. Even as she transitioned into the talkie era and later reinvented herself with Sunset Boulevard, the weight of that costly divorce never fully lifted. Swanson may have been Hollywood royalty, but off-screen, her split from Somborn was one of the most expensive heartbreaks of the Golden Age. Charlie Chaplin and Lita Grey. In 1927, Charlie Chaplin wasn't just a Hollywood icon. He was one of the most recognizable faces in the world. But while audiences adored his on-screen antics, his personal life was imploding in a scandal that would cost him a fortune. His second wife, Lita Grey, had filed for divorce, and the fallout was nothing short of a media firestorm. Grey, who had married Chaplin as a teenager, accused him of infidelity, emotional cruelty, and manipulation. Her 50-page divorce complaint was packed with allegations so explosive that when it leaked to the press, it became front-page news. The public, once enamored with Chaplin's lovable tramp persona, now saw a much darker side of the comedian. The backlash was swift, with some calling for boycotts of his films, though there's little evidence that theaters actually followed through. Then came the financial reckoning. Chaplin was ordered to pay Grey a staggering $600,000, an eye-watering sum at the time, worth roughly $10 million today. On top of that, he had to provide ongoing support for their 2 children. At the time, it was the largest divorce settlement in Hollywood history, a record-breaking payout that sent shockwaves through the industry. The financial hit forced Chaplin to accelerate his film projects just to recover, but the damage to his reputation lingered. Once seen as the king of silent cinema, he was now a cautionary tale of how personal scandals could bleed into a professional ruin. Though he eventually rebuilt his career, the divorce from Lita Grey remained one of the most expensive and infamous breakups of Hollywood's golden age. Joan Crawford and Franchot Tone. In 1939, Joan Crawford's divorce from Franchot Tone came with a price tag that made Hollywood gossip columns buzz. At the time, Crawford was one of MGM's most bankable stars, while Tone, though a respected actor, struggled to escape her shadow. Their marriage had started with promise, but jealousy, career pressures, and alleged infidelity turned it into a battlefield. Crawford filed for divorce on the grounds of mental cruelty, a charge often used in an era when proving fault was mandatory. The settlement? Reports suggest Tone walked away with a staggering sum. Some sources claim as high as $300,000, the equivalent of several million today. On top of that, Crawford was reportedly required to pay alimony, an arrangement that, according to some insiders, she found deeply frustrating. But here's where things get murky. Some accounts claim that the night before their divorce was finalized, Crawford and Tone were spotted dancing together, as if caught in a moment of nostalgia before severing ties. No official records confirm this, but the story has persisted in Hollywood lore. Despite their bitter split, Crawford later stepped in when Tone's health declined due to substance-related issues and illness. She allegedly paid for his medical care and even arranged his funeral in 1968. Whether out of lingering affection or a sense of duty, Crawford's financial involvement in Tone's final years adds another layer of complexity to their story. In the end, Crawford's career soared post-divorce, cementing her legacy as one of Hollywood's most powerful women. Tone, on the other hand, continued acting but never regained the same level of prominence. Their divorce cost Crawford a fortune, but for her it may have been the price of freedom. John Wayne and Esperanza Bauer. John Wayne was the undisputed king of westerns in the 1950s, but his off-screen life was anything but smooth riding. His marriage to Esperanza Bauer, a former Mexican actress, was a stormy one, filled with jealousy, accusations, and fiery tempers. Some accounts whisper that their fights were so explosive neighbors feared for their safety. One particularly wild rumor even suggests she once fired a gun in Wayne's direction after a late-night argument, though there's no solid proof to back that up. By 1954, the marriage had crumbled beyond repair, and the divorce battle turned ruthless. Bauer accused Wayne of heavy drinking and infidelity, and she wasn't about to walk away empty-handed. The final settlement? A jaw-dropping $500,000. A fortune in the 1950s worth roughly $5.5 million today, when adjusted for inflation. On top of that, Wayne lost multiple properties and was locked into ongoing alimony payments. The financial hit was so steep, some say he had to take on extra film roles just to stay afloat. For a man who built his image on rugged independence, the divorce was a humbling and expensive lesson. But Wayne wasn't one to dwell on setbacks. Just 3 years later, he remarried and kept churning out box office hits, proving that not even a costly heartbreak could slow him down. Still, his split from Bauer remains one of Hollywood's most expensive and most volatile divorces of its golden age. Rita Hayworth and Prince Ali Khan. Rita Hayworth was one of Hollywood's most dazzling stars, but in 1949, she stepped into a different kind of spotlight: royalty. Her marriage to Prince Ali Khan, the son of Aga Khan III, had all the makings of a fairy tale. But behind the glamour, trouble brewed fast. Khan was infamous for his extravagant lifestyle and rumored affairs, and Hayworth wasn't willing to tolerate it. By 1951, she filed for divorce, citing mental cruelty. The financial settlement was staggering for its time. Hayworth walked away with a sum reported to be over $1 million, an astronomical amount in the early 1950s, along with child support for their daughter, Princess Yasmin. But the real battle wasn't over money, it was over custody. Some reports suggest Ali Khan offered an additional fortune if Hayworth agreed to raise Yasmin in his faith and allow him frequent visits. Whether this was a formal offer or just speculation, one thing was clear: Hayworth refused. She was determined to raise her daughter in the United States. The divorce dominated headlines, with whispers of Ali Khan attempting to take Yasmin overseas. At one point, Hayworth reportedly fled to Lake Tahoe with her daughter, fearing an international custody fight. Though she ultimately won custody, financial struggles followed. Years later, she even attempted to sue her first husband, Orson Welles, for unpaid child support, though the case went nowhere. Despite the $1 million payout, Hayworth's post-divorce years were anything but stable. Her career wavered, her finances dwindled, and she never quite found the fairy tale ending she once dreamed of. For the woman Hollywood once called the love goddess, love had come at a steep price. Clark Gable and Maria Langham. Clark Gable may have ruled Hollywood, but his divorce from Maria Langham in 1939 came with a staggering price tag, reportedly around $300,000. In today's money, that's millions, a fortune even for a box office king. Some say the settlement left him financially strained, though Gable was already committed to starring in Gone with the Wind, a role that would cement his legacy. What's certain is that he was determined to marry Carole Lombard, the woman he adored. Their love story was the stuff of Hollywood legend, full of pranks, passion, and devotion. But tragedy struck in 1942 when Lombard perished in a plane crash. Rumors swirl that she was rushing home to confront Gable over whispers of infidelity, though no solid evidence confirms this. Devastated, Gable enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces, flying combat missions as if trying to outrun his grief. He may have paid a fortune for his freedom, but in the end, love cost him far more. Lana Turner and Bob Topping. Lana Turner lived in a world of diamonds and decadence, and her marriage to millionaire Bob Topping was no exception. When he proposed at New York's Elite 21 Club, he didn't just offer a ring, he dropped a diamond into her martini. Their 1948 wedding kicked off a life of extravagance, from a 5-month honeymoon to a lavish estate dubbed Mapletop. But behind the glitz, trouble brewed. Topping, heir to a steel fortune, had a taste for high-stakes gambling and luxury that even his wealth couldn't sustain. By 1952, the marriage crumbled, and the divorce came at a staggering cost. Reports estimate Turner walked away with a settlement of $500,000, a fortune in the early 1950s equivalent to millions today. Some sources speculate that the true cost was even higher when factoring in legal fees and property division. While this was one of Hollywood's priciest breakups, it wasn't the last time Turner would make headlines for her personal life. Just years later, she found herself embroiled in an even bigger scandal, one that would overshadow even the most expensive divorce settlements of her era. Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher. In 1955, Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher were Hollywood's golden couple, young, beautiful, and seemingly untouchable. But by 1959, their fairy tale had imploded in one of the most infamous scandals of the era. Fisher's highly publicized affair with Elizabeth Taylor didn't just shatter his marriage, it shattered his career. When Reynolds filed for divorce, the settlement was staggering. $500,000, a fortune at the time, roughly equivalent to $5 million today. That sum covered alimony, child support for their 2 children, Carrie and Todd, and legal fees. Reynolds also retained ownership of their lavish home and other assets. But the real cost? Fisher's reputation. Once a chart-topping singer and beloved television personality, he found himself blacklisted by studios and shunned by audiences. Though he continued performing in smaller venues, his days as a mainstream star were over. Meanwhile, Reynolds turned heartbreak into triumph, cementing her legacy with films like The Unsinkable Molly Brown and earning an Academy Award nomination. Years later, she reflected on the ordeal, admitting, "The financial burden of the divorce was secondary to the emotional betrayal." But in the end, she remained Hollywood royalty, while Fisher became a cautionary tale of scandal and downfall. Ingrid Bergman and Petter Lindstrom. In 1950, Ingrid Bergman wasn't just a Hollywood icon. She was its reigning queen. But when word spread that she was expecting director Roberto Rossellini's child while still married to Swedish neurosurgeon Petter Lindstrom, the backlash was ferocious. The scandal didn't just dominate tabloids. It reached the U.S. Senate, where Senator Edwin C. Johnson condemned her as a powerful influence for evil, accusing Hollywood of moral corruption. Lindstrom, furious and deeply embarrassed, refused to grant an easy divorce. Bergman had pleaded for one twice before, but he only relented when the affair became undeniable. Their legal battle was ruthless. Lindstrom secured full custody of their daughter, Pia, and Bergman was reportedly barred from seeing her for years. Financially, the divorce took a toll. Though exact figures remain undisclosed, Bergman was required to pay child support and legal fees, a burden that, according to some accounts, strained her finances. While she wasn't left destitute, the fallout was severe enough to force her into European exile, effectively shutting her out of Hollywood for years. Her career, once untouchable, was in tatters. Studios distanced themselves and American audiences turned their backs. But Bergman wasn't one to fade quietly. In 1957, she staged a triumphant comeback, winning an Academy Award for Anastasia. Still, the damage was done. Her divorce wasn't just expensive. It was a public reckoning, proving that even the most beloved stars weren't immune to Hollywood's shifting moral tides. Mickey Rooney and Martha Vickers. Mickey Rooney wasn't just a Hollywood icon, he was a serial groom, marrying 8 times and paying the price for it, quite literally. His third divorce from actress Martha Vickers in 1951 was particularly brutal. Vickers reportedly walked away with a staggering $250,000, an amount that would be worth several million today. For Rooney, who was once the highest-paid actor in Hollywood, this was just one of many financial blows. His relentless cycle of marriages and settlements drained his fortune, forcing him to take any role he could find, even well into his 80s. Some whisper that his financial troubles weren't just about love. His lavish lifestyle and gambling habits didn't help either. Whatever the cause, his divorces remain some of the costliest in Golden Age Hollywood history. Orson Welles and Rita Hayworth. In 1943, Orson Welles and Rita Hayworth were Hollywood royalty. He the visionary behind Citizen Kane, she the smoldering siren of the silver screen. But their fairy tale was doomed from the start. Welles, ever the restless genius, was consumed by his work, while Hayworth craved stability. By 1947, she had enough. In court, she revealed the painful truth. During the entire period of our marriage, he showed no interest in establishing a home. Mr. Welles told me he never should have married in the first place, that it interfered with his freedom and his way of life. The price of their shattered union? Over $500,000, worth nearly $6 million today, including support for their daughter, Rebecca. Even as their marriage unraveled, they remained entangled professionally. Welles directed Hayworth in The Lady from Shanghai, famously convincing her to chop off her signature auburn locks and dye them platinum blonde, a transformation that stunned audiences. The film, however, was a box office disappointment at the time, though it later earned critical acclaim. Post-divorce, Hayworth's star only burned brighter, securing her legacy with films like Gilda and Pal Joey. Wells, on the other hand, continued to battle financial instability, often scrambling for funding for his ambitious projects. While he never stopped working, money was a constant struggle. Years later, he admitted that losing Hayworth was one of his greatest regrets. And Hayworth? She once called Wells the love of my life, a love story that ended in heartbreak and a staggering price tag. Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner. Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner's divorce wasn't just a heartbreak, it was a financial earthquake. When their marriage officially ended in 1957, Gardner walked away with a settlement that reportedly granted her 25% of Sinatra's future earnings. That wasn't just a one-time payout. It meant that every hit record, every sold-out show, and every film role Sinatra landed after their split still lined Gardner's pockets. Given Sinatra's eventual resurgence, this deal likely made Gardner millions over time. Their relationship had always been a tempest. Sinatra, still married to his first wife, Nancy, was utterly consumed by Gardner, a woman as wild as she was beautiful. When they wed in 1951, Hollywood was obsessed with them. But behind closed doors, their marriage was a battlefield. Sinatra's career was floundering, while Gardner's was soaring, and the power imbalance spread jealousy, insecurity, and explosive fights. Infidelity ran rampant, with both accused of stepping out, only fueling their legendary clashes. By 1953, the damage was beyond repair. Gardner initiated their separation, though the legal battle dragged on for years. Sinatra was reportedly shattered. Some claim his heartbreak bled into his music, with his 1955 album In the Wee Small Hours, drenched in the sorrow of losing Ava. Whether that's true or just poetic speculation, one thing is certain: he never truly let her go. Even after their divorce, Sinatra continued to send Gardner flowers. And when she fell ill in her later years, he quietly covered her medical expenses. Their love may have been doomed, but it never truly died. Gary Cooper and Veronica Balfe. Gary Cooper was the silver screen's ultimate cowboy, tall, stoic, and effortlessly charismatic. But off-camera, his personal life was a storm of affairs, regrets, and one of Hollywood's priciest divorces of the Golden Age. In 1933, he married Veronica Balfe, a New York socialite with deep Hollywood ties. For nearly 2 decades, she endured his notorious infidelities, until his affair with actress Patricia Neal became too public to ignore. Rumors swirled that Cooper's relationship with Neal wasn't just an on-set fling, but a passionate, years-long entanglement. Some even speculate that their romance nearly led to marriage, but Cooper's Catholic guilt and pressure from his wife kept him from leaving Balfe entirely. By 1951, Balfe had enough. She filed for divorce, and when the dust settled, she walked away with a settlement reportedly worth over $400,000, an astronomical sum at the time, equivalent to several million today. That payout made their split one of the most expensive in Hollywood history. Cooper, despite the financial sting, remained a box office titan. Just 2 years later, he won an Academy Award for High Noon, proving that scandal couldn't tarnish his star power. But privately, he wasn't as untouchable. Friends later claimed he regretted losing Balfe, especially as his health declined. Meanwhile, she stepped away from Hollywood's chaos, raising their daughter Maria and living a life far from the scandals that once defined her marriage. A Hollywood legend on screen, a cautionary tale off it, Gary Cooper's divorce was proof that even the biggest stars couldn't buy their way out of heartbreak. Henry Fonda and Francis Ford Seymour. Henry Fonda was Hollywood's quintessential leading man, stoic, commanding, and deeply private. But behind the scenes, his personal life unraveled in ways that money couldn't fix. By the late 1940s, his marriage to Francis Ford Seymour was in shambles. Fonda, known for his distant demeanor, had already moved on emotionally. When he filed for divorce in 1949, the fallout was devastating. Frances, struggling with her mental health, was institutionalized at Craig House Sanitarium in New York. In April of 1950, she tragically passed away on her 42nd birthday. Financially, the divorce was no small affair. Reports suggest Fonda paid a settlement of around $300,000, a fortune at the time, worth millions today. However, exact figures remain elusive, as court records and financial documents from the case are scarce. What is clear is that the split left deep emotional scars, particularly for their children, Jane and Peter Fonda. Jane later opened up about her mother's struggles in her memoir, though specific details about her past remain debated. Fonda, true to form, rarely spoke about the ordeal. Some saw his silence as cold indifference, while others believed he was simply a product of his time, an era where men were expected to suppress emotion and mental health was a taboo subject. Regardless, the divorce was one of Hollywood's most costly, not just in dollars, but in heartbreak. Errol Flynn and Lily DeMita. Errol Flynn was Hollywood's ultimate swashbuckler, charming, reckless, and larger than life. But behind the scenes, his marriage to French actress Lily DeMita was a tempest waiting to erupt. They wed in the mid-1930s, and almost immediately the cracks began to show. Flynn's notorious infidelity and extravagant spending fueled constant battles, with some accounts suggesting their arguments turned physical. One particularly infamous story claims DeMita once lashed out at Flynn during a heated fight, though the exact details remain murky. By 1940, DeMita had reached her breaking point. She filed for divorce, citing grievous mental and physical anguish and accusing Flynn of extreme cruelty, allegations that sent tabloids into a frenzy. The legal battle stretched on for 2 years before culminating in a jaw-dropping settlement. When the divorce was finalized in 1942, DeMita walked away with over $500,000, equivalent to nearly $10 million today, plus $1,500 a month in alimony. For Flynn, the financial blow was catastrophic. He was already hemorrhaging money, sinking fortunes into his lavish Mulholland farm estate while living far beyond his means. Now he was legally bound to keep paying DeMita, and when he inevitably missed payments, she wasted no time dragging him back to court. Desperate for cash, Flynn took on roles that critics saw as beneath his once golden status, including overseas productions that tarnished his reputation. His later years were marked by financial instability and legal troubles, proving that even Hollywood's most dashing leading man wasn't immune to the cost of a bad marriage. The swashbuckler had been defeated, not by a sword, but by a divorce settlement that nearly bankrupted him. Robert Taylor and Barbara Stanwyck. When MGM arranged the marriage of Robert Taylor and Barbara Stanwyck in the late 1930s, it was less about love and more about optics. Taylor, a rising matinee idol, had persistent rumors swirling about his personal life, and Stanwyck, already an established star, agreed to the match. But when their union dissolved in 1951, it came with a hefty price tag. Stanwyck walked away with a significant financial settlement, reportedly securing a portion of Taylor's future earnings, though exact figures remain debated. Some sources suggest she received hundreds of thousands of dollars, an astronomical sum for the time. She also retained their lavish home and most shared assets, leaving Taylor with little more than his career and, as one unverified story claims, a single coffee table. The split wasn't a public scandal, at least not at first, but by the time Taylor traveled to Rome to film Quo Vadis in 1950, his romance with Italian actress Lea De Leo had become an open secret. Whether Stanwyck directly confronted him remains unclear, but their divorce was finalized soon after. Taylor moved on, marrying actress Ursula Thies in 1954, while Stanwyck never remarried, instead pouring herself into her work. Though their marriage may have been orchestrated, its end was all too real, and one of Hollywood's most expensive breakups. Marlon Brando and Anna Kashfi. Marlon Brando's marriage to Anna Kashfi was a Hollywood disaster that cost him far more than just heartache. When the two wed in 1957, Brando was at the peak of his career, fresh off On the Waterfront and A Streetcar Named Desire. Kashfi, a young actress, had a mysterious allure. She claimed Indian heritage, but it later emerged she was actually Welsh, a revelation that fueled endless speculation. Their marriage barely lasted a year before collapsing into a bitter divorce in 1959. But the real battle wasn't over love. It was over their son, Christian Brando. What followed was a custody war so vicious it dragged on for over a decade, draining Brando's fortune. Anna accused him of being an unfit father, citing his wild lifestyle and revolving door of relationships. Brando fired back, pointing to Kashfi's struggles with substance-related issues, arguing she was in no condition to raise their child. The legal fees alone were astronomical, but the financial bleeding didn't stop there. Between alimony, child support, and endless court motions, Brando shelled out a fortune. Exact figures remain elusive, but some estimates suggest he spent hundreds of thousands, an immense sum for the time. Then in 1972, the battle took a shocking turn. Kashfi orchestrated a kidnapping, hiring someone to take Christian from Brando's custody. The stunt backfired spectacularly, only strengthening Brando's case. He ultimately won full custody, but at a staggering cost. While the financial toll was immense, Brando's career remained bulletproof. He would go on to redefine cinema with The Godfather, proving that even a divorce as brutal as his couldn't break him. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.